Hey everyone, welcome to the Dram Amateur Podcast, your go-to show for everything bourbon, whiskey, rum, tequila, mezcal, and beyond. I'm your host, Jason. Join me as I journey and explore the world of alcoholic spirits. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Dram Amateur Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of spirits and sips that make the world of whiskey, bourbon, rum, tequila, and mezcal so exciting. I'm your host, Jason, and I'm thrilled to have you here for another pour of a great episode. Before we dive in, don't forget to connect with me on Instagram, X, and Threads at Dram_amateur and Facebook under the Dram Amateur Podcast to stay in the loop with exclusive content and updates. Whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or just starting your journey into the world of fine spirits, this is your spot to sip, learn, and share. So pour yourself something good, get comfortable, and let's kick off another unforgettable episode of the Dram Amateur Podcast. And I am super excited tonight because we are going to be stepping into a world where cocktails are art, conversations flow like a perfect pour, and cats reign supreme. Our guest, Chris, is none other than the creative force behind the Instagram account that's shaking up the bourbon cocktail scene, Cats, Cocktails, and Conversations. He's a master of mixology with a knack for storytelling, blending his passions into a one-of-a-kind experience that's equal parts creativity, charisma, and, of course, feline finesse. Man, who doesn't love the cats? Whether he's crafting a drink that's as bold as his style or sharing the story behind the glass, he's built a loyal following that's we're here for it all. So get ready to stir some things up as we chat about the art of cocktails. We'll talk about a little bit of bourbon, the magic of connections, and why cats just might be the ultimate drinking companions. So let's raise a glass to Cats, Cocktails, and Conversations and dive into this world. Chris, man, thanks for having you on the podcast, man. Cheers. How are you?
Dude, man, thanks for having me. That was so good and so generous. I feel like I'm pumped up now, man. Hell yeah, that was that best part of my day right there. Shoot.
I was like, we gotta pump everybody up when they join, and we gotta talk about it and write something ridiculous and just have a little bit of fun with it. So,
dude, I love it, man. Hell yeah, yeah, super excited to be a part.
Good, man. I really can't thank you enough for being here. And for me, it was great meeting you. So Chris and I met at Whiskey Riot. And that was a cool connection to make. And then afterwards, I started just reaching out to everybody I met, and you and I still stayed connected, which was great. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your night to come sit down and talk with me. So tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Tell me a little bit about your journey. Let's start from maybe the beginning, not when you were born, but maybe from the beginning of like Instagram. What got you into Instagram and into this community?
So realistically, my wife and I, Jenny, who's my counterpart on Cats Cocktails, she and I had talked about having a bar in our backyard and doing something like that. And like, I am just the type of person that I love creative things. I love trying new things and seeing what I can make happen. I love like a little bit of food science and how flavors mix together. So I decided, I said to her right before Christmas, 21, I think it was. I said, "What do you think of doing like an Instagram thing and like trying this, like see if this stuff works?" Like we had started having conversations of hopefully opening our own bar and that kind of thing someday. And like, well, it'd be kind of cool to see like what people think of what we're doing. Like, do the ideas that I have and like our personalities, is this something people would be interested in? And we started Cats, Cocktails, Conversations after that, and it took us a minute to get our footing. You know, you try and figure out your niche and who you are in anything. And it took us a little bit. We got on our feet and kind of figured out just allowing our personalities to flow, and got to try a lot of fun things and spend so much money on booze in the beginning. And it's been really cool, man. Yeah. It just opened up a lot of doors and to learn from other people and what their passions are. And we have been into the whiskey scene for a while and had been involved in some local clubs and stuff here in East Texas. And I was like, this is another outlet to like talk to more people that like this thing that we like and see what they have or what they've tasted. And, it creates, what I didn't realize is it creates so many like kick-ass relationships, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
you make some really great connections with some really awesome people. But yeah, man, that kind of opened the door for us of, you know, exploring more with cocktails and with whiskey and getting to connect with brands and things like that. But yeah.
That's really cool. So you've been on Instagram now for 3 years. How have things evolved for you guys? Right from, I know my journey has evolved quite a bit from where I thought I started and kind of where I'm
Yeah.
going. And I'm trying to showcase. You mentioned personality, right? I can be a
Yep.
pretty big personality sometimes, so I temper things down sometimes. So I'm trying to understand where my personality fits into all of this. But for you guys, right? How has your evolution kind of gone on Instagram over the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, man. So super lucky with that. I am definitely the bigger of the two personalities with Jenny and I, and I think a lot of that is just we're really good at balancing each other out because I am just a goofball. You put a camera in front of me and it just is a comfortable thing. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna kind of do what I do and act, be myself, and be a fool and irritate my wife most of the time. And it works out great because she's the most patient person. And it's definitely grown so much. Like it taught me a lot about interacting with people that through a virtual environment, right?
Mhm.
Like what it looks like. We all went through like the beginnings of that in 2020, which I feel like kind of opened up like the ability to be comfortable trying those things. And you're like, whatever, like I'm gonna put my shit out on the internet, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't.
Yep.
Um, and then like I feel like Instagram lives, podcasts took like a stronger role. I feel like in people's lives, especially like they're like, I want some more outside input from normal fucking people like me.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, and I feel like that it really gave us an opportunity to let a creative outlet out and bring in more connectivity with people who may or may not be the same type of people, may have high energy, may not, but we're all passionate about something, right? For the most part, obviously, like it's the whiskey world and kind of the community that we got kind of niched into, which I love. Um, it's badass to talk whiskey with people, and I'll nerd out all day long because I'm just that way. If I'm passionate about something, I'm like, oh no, we're going to talk about it all, and then I find that limit of like, okay, this is where your knowledge is at. Let's live there, and I love it. It's super fun. Just what the Instagram world has brought of just relationships with really cool people. Honestly,
That's really cool. That's really cool. So talk about some of your relationships, right? Like I noticed you're a member of the Spirit Animal Society as
hell
well,
yeah.
right? Tell me a little
Hmm.
bit. I don't know very much about them. I know a lot of people that I follow are a member of that, but I don't know the background behind all of it or anything. So tell me a little bit about the Spirit Animal Society.
Yeah, so three different people founded the Spirit Animal Society, Lost Nemo amongst the whiskey and Sexy Bourbon. They all founded it, uh, and just kind of got an outlet. I remember it was early 22, and Nemo commented on something we had posted, like early on, uh, and she messaged, and I was like, "Oh, thanks so much," and she said we're doing a Zoom call. If you want to hop on tonight, and sent me the link, and Jenny and I hopped on, and we just hung out with this group of people we had never met in person.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was just organic conversation, and it was fun because there is that little bit. I mean, you get it, like we do this stuff because we want to be seen a little bit. We want people to know our side of the story, and people knew who we were. And I'm like, we got like at the time like 200 followers or 300 followers. Like we're a drop in the pond, of the Instagram world, if that. And just got to connect with some cool people and built some kick-ass relationships, like Lady in the Bourbon and 1311 Miscellaneous, that Mike and Jess, two, quite literally, two of Jay and I's closest friends at this time in our lives, along with a few other people like Brandon Whiskey Weather, the Amanda House, who's um, uh, oh my gosh, Whiskey and Wander, and Derek, Straight Lines and Bourbon. Like just
Yep.
got to do some cool stuff with those guys and really connected and built some strong relationships. But I mean, the first people we met in person were Mike and Jess, and we were like do you want to meet up in Kentucky? They live in Mass. We live in Texas. And it was like kind of halfway, and ended up doing some Bourbon Trail stuff up there. And since then, like they surprised me on my birthday this last year. Like
That's
that's
awesome.
the kind of stuff that, Instagram has kind of brought to available to people. And, it's so funny. Like, you and I, we grew up in an age where our parents were like, don't meet people on the
Yeah.
internet. And now all I fucking do is meet people on the internet.
Two of my best friends I actually met playing SOCOM when I was a lot
Dude,
younger in my day.
so calm. Wow.
Playing
Yeah.
SOCOM. Yeah, so we were playing SOCOM, and we were playing in an open room, and they were part of one of the clans, and we ended up talking, and we had to get approval from the clan leader to be added to the clan and all that stuff. And now they
Hmm.
live in Syracuse. And I live in Georgia now,
Yeah.
so I go up and see them probably once or twice a year, and they're like literally my best friends for the last 15 years. How crazy is like a virtual connection like that you can create relationships that are going to
Yep.
last forever, you know?
Oh, yeah. Love that, man. It's so funny. So calm, dude. Like,
It's a
that's a
great
deep cut
game,
right
man.
there. Oh,
Yeah,
man. That game infuriated me. I was so bad at it. It was
I
so
loved
fun.
it. I loved it. I tell my kids about stories about it all the time, and I'm like, you guys have not played a video game until you play SOCOM. It's
Right.
fantastic. It's
You,
fantastic.
you have not rage quit until you've played SOCOM.
Very true. Hey, so on your journey, I don't know. So when you started Instagram, right? Did you have a ton of bottles that you already had, or did you start the journey small and then evolve? Like, what does it look like for you with your journey into whiskey and bourbon or whatever, and cocktails or whatever else you might be into since you started Instagram?
Yeah, man. It was a pretty small collection. I mean, especially relatively now. Um, it was pretty small. Like, had some whiskeys. Like, I mean, for somebody who hadn't really been in the scene at all, I mean, I had like 9 or 10 bottles or something, which for like a normal person is like, that's a lot of whiskey. Are you
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I got into this, and like, I mean, it's funny. Like, I would rather spend, $120 on a bottle of whiskey than I would spend $40 on liqueurs, or something like that. But like, at the time, like, you had to have those things as these instruments to create. And I remember starting, and I was like, if I want to have content, I have to have
Yeah,
access to more than just, sweet vermouth or Cointreau or whatever. And just going out and buying stuff and having stuff in the back. And I mean, I still have stuff that like I've used twice. Like, you realize that, like, what the important things are and what you use a lot and what works in cocktails. And I mean, I went from a collection of 9 bottles to, I mean, at one point, well over 150 or so.
wow.
Like, yeah, it just was so much stuff, and it's a lot of money that was spent. And graciously, I mean, as you grow, and you become more involved, brands will, send you samples or send you this, and really grateful for that, to have been able to have that in some of this. For the most part, I've bought every bottle on my shelf. But it's really cool that, like, these brands see you as somebody that's like, oh, like, they're kind of not a person totally of consequence, but they're passionate about this thing, and I'd love to hear what they feel about it or how they can use this thing differently. There are some brands that do it really, really well. It's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So I won't ask you your favorite pour because it's probably if you're like me, there's probably many different ones. So maybe
Yeah, it's
naming
tough.
one might be hard, right? What's your biggest surprise pour ever, right? Whether you had a
Oh,
sample or bought a bottle, like biggest shock, like you're blown away, like what the hell is this?
that is the best way I've heard that question asked. Um, let's see. I would say, um, something. It was pretty recent. Uh, Man, oh, that's such a good question. I like that question. I would say, honestly, for me, Jenny picked up. This is probably a year and a half ago. I'm a sucker for single malts, anyways. Like, I,
Oh,
I
okay.
love, I love bourbon. Like, I love the bourbon world. I'm a big fan of that. But single malts, like especially single malt Scotch, was my entry into the whiskey world, which is a weird place to begin. But I did. And I would say probably mine was she picked up this Westward single barrel from Total Wine. And like, there's not really many people that do American
Hmm.
single malts, single barrels. And it was one of the first ones I'd ever seen. She picked it up. It's like 127 proof, and it is delicious. It is so, so good. Um, you know, and that's I obviously I'm going outside of 10th Mountain here, but we'll get to that. But the that one just really surprised me. It was just a different category at the time. I hadn't seen anything like that. I hadn't seen a single barrel single malt, um, and it was just like a chocolate bomb. And it had only been like a month since we had bought our first Westward, which was the Pinot Noir finish, which I loved, and it was a whiskey of I think it was 22 for me. It was top 10. Um, it was just stellar pick. But I mean that pick was just astounding, and I still have a little bit left because I'm just like babying it. It was very very good.
When you get something like that, you gotta slow roll it and appreciate it
Hmm.
because you're never gonna find it again, or might be hard to find at least. So
Exactly.
yeah, those are cool. So let's stay on the whiskey front. So yeah, so you mentioned 10th Mountain, and that's how I met you at Whiskey Riot. So
Yeah.
10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company. Tell me a little bit about them, how you got affiliated with them, right?
Yeah.
And what you do, and tell me a little bit about the brand.
Yeah, man. So super cool. I was on a live with Derek Straight Lines and Brian Z Whiskey hopped on, and he's the director of distribution for 10th Mountain. And we kind of hit it off, and then a couple lives later on a random Friday, we were talking whiskey, and I've been in sales for years, like long time. And I made a joke to him. I said, "Dude, you guys ever need a sales guy? Just let me know." And about almost a year to the day later, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, we might be looking for somebody."
Wow.
Uh, and it opened up this door for me to be in the industry I wanted. And I was working actually in the roofing industry, selling to roofing owners, like the people that like roofing contractor owners. Um, and this guy reached out to me and knew I was passionate about whiskey, knew I cared about it, and I love like what 10th Mountain stands for. 10th Mountain is such a philanthropic brand. They give back a lot to um, military nonprofits as well as first responder nonprofits. Every bottle we sell, it goes to one of those charities because we believe those guys did some awesome things for us. They're serving us currently. We want to be able to give back, and it's really cool. And 10th Mountain is named in honor of the 10th Mountain Division that was formed outside of Vail in Camp Hale, where we're from, um, in Colorado. They were the guys that were mountaineers, they were skiers, and they were drafted during World War II during the early 40s to be a mountaineering division. We saw what the Finnish did to the Russians, and we were like, we need some badass guys like that. Uh, so we train these guys up at 9,200 feet to be able to survive and have military tactics and understanding. And sent them to the Apennine Mountains in Italy, and they crossed what was called the Gothic Line. And it was thought to be this impenetrable place during World War II that was just deeply embedded in the mountains in Italy by the Germans and the Axis. And they were able to get through there, and it was actually one of the things that led to the downfall of Hitler. So, I mean, like, these guys did some cool stuff, and to this day, now they're currently stationed up in Fort Drum, New York, more as a ready deploy division, and they are the most actively deployed division to this day in the military, to my understanding.
Wow.
And we still are actively involved with people that are in the 10th and doing things for different segments. Jess, the lady in the bourbon, was actually out there. She did a tasting for 10th Mountain up in Fort Drum. And it's cool to see these guys, like, oh man, there's a 10th Mountain whiskey, and it's pretty cool to meet some of these guys. And everywhere I go, one of my favorite stories, I did a tasting for 10th Mountain here in Texas at a local humidor, um, and it's like smoking cigars and talking through our whiskey. And there's a guy there whose great uncle was in the 10th in the 40s, And he said, "Hey man, I have some things for you." So he gave me a hat that was his uncle's, that is
Oh,
branded in
that's
the
cool.
tent stuff. He's like, "This is yours, man." He's like, "It's just sitting in storage for me. Like you'll appreciate this. You understand what this means." And that, and gave me a cool book that's got some markings of some of his exploits in the tent. So we're was recently I recently received that, and I'm planning on getting some of that stuff up to our distillery so we can display some of those things and honor the guy. I mean, he did some cool things, and want people to experience like what the tents did, especially during those times. So it's pretty badass. And our single malt is legitimately one of my favorite cigar smoking single malts because it's like banana walnut bread. So
Oh,
that's what I'm
really?
drinking right now.
Who
Yeah,
doesn't
dude,
love who
it's
doesn't love banana walnut bread, man? It's like my favorite thing in the world is banana. If you eat banana walnut bread and anything apple, apple pie, apple anything,
yeah.
yeah, I'm like sold. Give me it.
Hmm.
Let me have it. So
Dude,
talk
so
about
good.
some of. So you mentioned the single malt. What
Hmm.
other products do they have, or
Yeah.
what do they have coming up? Is there any big news for 10th Mountain coming up that we need
Uh,
to look forward to?
No, man, nothing is releasing as far as new products. We do have a kick-ass single barrel program, and I'm not
Cool.
joking when I say this. This is hard to say, like when you work for a brand, but legitimately, we did a single malt barrel pick in St. Louis with ABV Bottle Shop.
Hmm.
Uh, it's south of St. Louis, and all he does. This is the coolest liquor store in the world, named Steve Akeley. It is only barrel picks, and it is all kinds of cool craft brands
Oh,
from
that's
all
cool.
over. And he did a single malt with us. He holds a spirits competition that's double blind, so the judges have no idea uh, what the product is, and they rate based on that. Um, and we did a single malt with him at this thing, and it won best overall whiskey, best hazmat, best cask strength whiskey,
Wow.
best just it was a very very cool prestigious award. And he was like, "Do you guys what could I do a barrel pick?" And they found a barrel that was very 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 close to what he had done, and I went up there for the release, um, and it was me and Brian, and I hadn't had it yet. Brian had it, and I was talking to Steve, and he's like, "Do you know the proof?" And I this self brag, I'm typically really good at guessing proof
Hmm.
within about two most of the time. Like I don't know why I'm good at that. I just am. And I tasted it, and I was convinced. You could not have told me otherwise unless you truly knew uh, that I tasted it, and I said it's 107. You couldn't prove me wrong. It drinks just like at my preferred proof. It was 130 proof. Like
Wow.
it just was a dark chocolate bomb with like deep, deep spice and like rich cherry and like dark, like really that like sweet banana note that you get. Like it was a stellar, stellar bottle. Um, and it's their highest rated bottle that they've ever had in the shop, and they have a panel of about 30 people that blindly vote on tasting notes on things, so they don't have impression. So that's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, it's been cool to see what other spirits we have. That one was it. The single malt was double platinum at Ascot Awards with Fred Minnick. We have a really cool bourbon that's a blue corn bourbon,
Oh, okay.
and being a Texas guy, like Balcones holds a special place in my heart.
Yep.
And they like to play with blue corn, and so does Still Austin. And it's such a dusty sweetness in a whiskey, and it's a super fun mash bill. Our rye is one of is our definitely our most awarded, and it's a lower mash bill rye, and I love to show people that rye because if they're not rye folks, like they're not fans of that spicy, typical 95.5 MGP style stuff, they taste this because it's a 69% rye, so it's a little bit lower. Nice, right? And it's just super tasty, a little bit sweeter note. Like it pulls the sweetness out with that blue corn on the back side of it as a little bit of a sweetening grain. It's super fun. Our brandy was top three in the country a
Nice.
couple years ago. Like we've got some fun stuff, and yeah, I mean I go on all day about the quality of the things, but um, Yeah. 10th Mountain is, I couldn't be a part of an organization that to sell whiskey just to sell whiskey.
Yeah.
Uh, Genuinely believe in what 10th Mountain stands for uh, and the product itself. Like it is just, it's good juice. Like you can tell the grains are great. That great grains lead to great product, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you on that. And a lot of that quality of grain, right? I think you're seeing a lot more distilleries do that where they're focusing on that quality from end to end, from
Yes.
grain to glass, really, or,
Yep.
even ground to glass. If you look at even
Yep.
how they're farming the grains and that process.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really interesting to see all that. Very interesting. So, what's a day in a life look like for you working for a whiskey company? I mean, a spirit company. That's pretty cool, man. I mean, I gotta admit, I'm a little jealous that you get to wake up every day and do that. Well, I got to go work corporate America for
Right.
for a living. But that's pretty cool. So, what does a day in life look like for you doing sales?
Man, it's so much of connection. That's what the spirit, is like of especially the whiskey world is connection with people and connection with stories. And I get to tell the story to whether they're liquor stores or bars or restaurants or doing events. I got to do a really cool event. I obviously I was when I was up in Atlanta for Whiskey Riot. I did an event with Shepherd's Men who they partner with the SHARE program up there at the hospital, which is for uh, uh, soldiers that came back that deal with PTSD and are struggling with mental health and things like that. And they help pay for this program through their nonprofit because it's not something covered by insurance, which is fucking wild to me.
Yeah.
But these guys, went through some crazy things and did whatever they could for this country. And we don't necessarily always back those things as a country as a standpoint. But from a financial standpoint, these guys come back and, that's what they know. Like that's what they were a part of. They were involved in some extreme things and got to be a part of this event and hear the stories of some of these guys. One of the guys actually was a 10th Mountain soldier, which is like really cool. And hearing his story and what he went through and like how he felt after he came back and just trying to adjust to normalcy and what that feels like and being able to he wasn't in a place where he could afford this program and a Shepherd's Man was able to put him through that. And that's so cool to know, like as a brand, we're a part of those things. Like we're actively giving back to these people. It's not just, any brand can say they give back, they can, but like, what's the reality of it? Where's the time investment? Where's the effort, the emotional investment? And it's really cool to see that and, it'd be reality within a brand.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, and that resonates with me because I just got introduced through one of my other podcast community partners to Silent Hero Cigars. He's out of Wyoming, Bryce out of Wyoming, and he does the same thing as giving back to soldiers with PTSD, right, or people coming back with PTSD. And I listened to a podcast he recently did with Smoking Sounds Pod, and he was talking about, hey, look, if you're ever in a situation where you just need somebody to talk to, right? Like I want to be able to create that community, like that I'm there, right? I just ping me on Instagram. Let's talk about that. So knowing you have people out there, right, that are supportive like that in any way, shape, and form they can, and they're using their power to create that community, create that connection, and make sure that supports them. Man, I totally support that as a consumer, right? And I really believe in that. It's a great story. So no, it's awesome. Yeah. That's a great effort by all. So kudos to you guys for doing that.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit about World War II. Are you a history buff? Do you like that stuff? Or I mean, you telling me you got a hat from somebody brings back my memories. My grandfather fought in World War II as well. He was in the Navy. Man. So, and I know like growing up and getting older as I go, he passed away 20 years ago or so now. But I always want to know like his artifacts. Like I have his original letter that was typed up from the local the local pharmacist list. I have like
Oh man.
his pastor's letters. I have like his acceptance letters from the Navy. I have some of his pictures from the Navy. So it's cool to
Dude.
have those artifacts, right? And it
Yeah.
resonates with me. So do you have a connection with World War II or like history or anything like that?
Man, I enjoy it. Like I enjoy learning about it. It's really funny. My daughter, uh, she is she is a bigger history nerd than I am, but it's super fun because like I'll like dive into something and she'll randomly send me podcasts of
Oh,
like
cool.
World War II podcasts or things like that. And she's like, "Have you listened to this? Because you should. It's amazing." And it's so fun. Like I enjoy history. I wouldn't say I'm a history buff by any means, but like learning about it and seeing perspective, from soldiers and from family members that experienced it. My grandfather he was in World War II and he was drafted as a medic, and he never after first part of his tour, he was a good shot, so they made him a sniper,
Oh,
and
wow, that's cool.
he wouldn't talk about it. Did not talk about it to anybody. And at one point in time, my mom uh, had a conversation with him, and he told her some stories that he never told anybody else, and asked her in confidence to keep it. And my mom quite literally took that to her grave.
Mm.
She passed, and we never got to hear those stories. But you know, like could for her, like that's really awesome because she was the right person for that, because she was empathetic and a listener and would ask questions, and it was someone that he felt safe with. Like, and I can't imagine to carry the kind of weight, like, because he said he's like, I didn't. The only thing I ever heard from him about about being a sniper is he said I didn't like it because I felt like I had to look the person in the eye.
Mm.
And like that's such a perspective, you don't think about, you know, because there were so many heinous things happening at that time. That, like, from an outside perspective, you're like, yeah, well, they are doing terrible things. You're just doing the other side, and that human connection side of it is just wild.
Yep.
But I mean, it's so the history of World War II and through the conflicts is just been is a cool thing to learn about and understand perspective of these people that lived out those times. My son's mom, her dad was a Vietnam vet. He was a Marine, uh, and his perspective of war was way different than my grandfather's perspective.
Yep.
It's interesting because it's generational, and it's people. It's why they were involved, how they ended up involved, and things like that. I think there's so many stories to be told, and it would be so interesting to hear from individuals' perspective. I always love when I see documentaries that have perspective of soldiers and what their ideals were. Are Those are the most interesting to me personally.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's one of those things that hearing those stories and those experience from firsthand accounts is definitely something that pauses you a little bit and makes you stop and think and think reflect on it, right? And just
Yeah.
be like, wow, that's something that either you never thought of or wouldn't think
Hmm.
of. I mean, like, even what you said with the sniper thing, I would never think to think that way, look at somebody in the eye, right, and
Yeah.
be uncomfortable with that. Like, first time I've ever hearing that, so that's even for me is like, man, that's crazy. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine going through that. So, yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
what cigar are you smoking?
So I'm smoking. So I get this really cool privilege. My wife manages a local cigar lounge,
Oh,
and
nice.
I curate all the cigars there.
Okay.
But we got this brand. It's Limited Cigar Association, and they do like a monthly program with cigar lounges where you can get these things, and they blend with people like AJ Fernandez, Noel Rojas, Chico Rivas, a bunch of people. And we've been doing their like monthly thing for a while and had tons of success, and they are badass, dude. Like legitimately, if you find them, they're worth it.
Okay.
I've had maybe one that I was like, it's okay, but the rest have been like stellar. And this is one of their ones that they did with someone for a release. It's called the 2022 Vintage, and it was so successful that they brought it on as a regular release now. And man, it's like my perfect flavor profile. It's a little lighter than I normally like, but it's like graham cracker and like cream and a
Oh,
little
that's
bit of
awesome.
nuttiness. Like, oh man, it's a stellar smoke. It's like a double Corona size. It's very, very good.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I've been trying to get into cigars a little bit more. I definitely enjoy them, but I think for me it's exploration a little bit more and trying
Hell yeah.
different ones. But the thing with it that I've noticed, and I've asked a little bit about it, so if I say this, I sound like an idiot, then that's fine too. But I'm finding the cigars are allocated too, man. Like there's different cigars in Oklahoma and Minnesota than
Yep.
they are in the Southeast, right? So it's almost like I've talked to a couple people. I'm like, man, we should all get together, buy cigars, and ship them over to each other, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Because
dude.
I may not ever get to try anything that
Yeah.
that they have. So like I went to Germany last December. No, when did I go to Germany? July. I was in Germany in July. I bought back a whole bunch of cigars that were
Yeah.
just that I couldn't get in the States. So like I asked the guy, I said, I don't want Cubans. I'm not messing with the risk of losing all my global entry and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, what do you have that I would not be able to get stateside? So I brought home
Yeah.
quite a few, which was really cool, man, to experience that. And there was some
Oh yeah.
absolute bangers that I absolutely loved in that. So I'm
Yeah.
still discovering and trying to figure out what I do like, but
Hmm.
it's been a pretty cool journey so far.
Yeah, man. That's what I love about cigars. So I got into cigars because I have this really intense habit of, based obviously on what I do. I dive into a thing and I want to know as much as I can about it.
That's cool.
And I nerd so much out about it. I did it with wine. I did it with beer, and whiskey was the most recent. Um, but I was like, I need something that I just enjoy, and I just do. And that was cigars. And I just kind of like dove into it with the intention of like figuring out what I like
Hmm.
and smoking things that I like and trying not to like understand enough like what types of leaf to a very high level. I was like, okay, I kind of like stuff from Nicaragua, or I like
Hmm.
Dominican Republic leaf, or I know I like Connecticut leaf versus a Maduro or whatever, like very, very just keeping it at arm's length. And my innate nature takes over, and I start to learn as much as I can. And I still kind of keep it at a little bit of a distance intentionally, but just so I can enjoy the flavors of them,
Yeah.
and focus on that. Because with getting to help pick out cigars and curate cigars for our local spot is like I want to smoke things that I know, okay, is from the perspective of, is this quality? Do I
Yeah.
enjoy this thing? Like, whether or not the flavor profile is my jam, like, is this a good cigar? Uh, and then translating that into, okay, which of these do I love? That I say, oh man, this is a definite yes. Not only because I know I love it, but because I know this is going to be one that's going to do well.
Yeah.
It's gonna sell well. And in doing that, I've dove a little bit deeper than I initially intended to, and but it's also something that it makes me slow down. Like
Yeah.
I get to sit here and I have to sit still for an hour or an hour and 10 minutes. Um, and whether I'm doing some work like on my computer or I'm watching golf YouTube, whatever it is, like the thing that's just kind of like getting me to kind of focus in on. And, sometimes I get this really cool moment where I take a puff on a cigar and I have to stop and I have to look at the cigar like, oh damn, that's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever had that moment, but I've had a couple cigars that quite literally, like, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the cigar world. It's another fun one.
That's cool. And you mentioned slowing down, right? I think nowadays in life, right, finding that time to slow down for even an hour, it gets harder and harder and harder and harder, right? And even
Yeah.
with what you're doing, with your job, your family, all of that stuff,
Hmm.
you're an influencer, hell, right? That takes time too, right?
Hmm.
Finding that time just to sit down and do that stuff is harder and harder. So kudos to you to put that effort in to do that and set that time aside for yourself.
Yeah, it's so easy in the way, our lives are today. Like it's easy to jump to the next thing, to do the next thing, to do the next thing. And I know I'm ADD enough that that's what I'm gonna do.
Yep.
Um, But I'm also a person who deals with anxiety and deals with depression. And if I don't take that separation for a time to do something for me, and now, don't get me wrong, like I love hanging out with my wife and stuff, and I love spending time with her or whatever. And like I would love to do this with her. She doesn't like cigars. She's tried. It's not her jam. Ironic. I know she runs a cigar shop, but she just has a lot of. She's very, very excellent at retail and understanding of trends and things like that. But she trusts people around her, which I think is indicative of a good leader. Is like you put these people around you that know what
Yeah.
they're doing, and she was put in place on purpose by a close friend of ours. And but she'll still like come sit outside with me while I smoke a cigar, and she might be scrolling TikTok or reading a book or whatever, um, but allows me to have this space for me, even if we're doing something separate. Like I still get to enjoy a thing that I do, and she gets to chill and do a thing that she loves, and it doesn't bother her, which I think is I'm lucky in that regard. Some people can't stand it, and some people don't have spouses that are like okay with like being around it, and on a regular basis. And she is, and that's I know I'm lucky in that regard. Um, but yeah, it's so important to find whatever that is, and take that time. And it's okay, whatever that looks like, whether it's 10, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, of focusing on okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's enjoy something of our own, whatever it is, and reset and give ourselves some recharge time. It's an easy thing to be distracted in a busy world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, kudos to our wives, right? Shout out to our significant others, because
Hell yeah.
without them, without them being understanding, right, it could be a whole different situation.
Right. Right.
So, all right, I'm gonna throw some insightful questions. Like I really want you to like look at this and go, oh shit, he's asking me the hard things now. So sorry, first one. So, right, as an influencer, you have to balance, right, authenticity with creating engaging content. So, what's been the biggest challenge in staying true to your taste while catering to audience's preferences?
Oh man. I've been lucky in that regard, just because I feel like I've been able to just be myself. Maybe a little bit bigger, like a little bit more silly, um, but pretty authentic. Like it has been. I'm kind of the mindset of like, I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna be respectful. I'm not gonna be just like, oh, you just gotta take me as I am. I'm an asshole or whatever. Like
Yep.
I don't think that's necessary. But it's um, being okay with just saying what I feel or doing what I feel. Um, and I've always just had a natural inkling for people, uh, and understanding where they come from. And you can disagree with me, but I can also disagree with you respectfully, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yep.
And I think uh, it's fun to be a part of that and listen to people that are vehemently like, oh, I hate Weller or whatever, like, cause silly, whatever. But I'm lucky enough to be like, I get it. Like, this isn't my favorite thing, but this, this is a good thing about it. And that's kind of who I am. And then just the things like our porch thoughts series that we do on our Instagram, like that is quite like very, very authentic to Jenny and I. Like it's obviously a little bit more theatrical, but it's us being just goofballs, and that's
Yep.
kind of who we are. My wife is definitely the introvert of the two of us, but uh, we get to balance that out, and it gives her gets allows people to see some of her personality, and not just my like over the top goofball that I am.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. No. Yeah, my wife's very. I think my wife and I balance each other out the same way. I'm the big goofball, the loud one, all that stuff, and she's the more quiet, reserved, and
Yeah.
balances me out for sure, definitely.
Hmm.
So what's something about the influencer world that surprised you when you first started compared to what you know now?
The relationships, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was like quite literally. I know we've said this, but it's just um, that these people on the other side of the screen are so similar to me, and I can joke and be completely real with them. Got to meet Anthony, the Bourbon Whiskey Library, when I was out in Colorado. Just awesome dude. We hung out a bunch, and just such a sweetheart. He and his wife, uh, just so real. Like, I mean, he's got a large following and founded a massive group, the Bourbon Thieves. And getting to spend time with the guy, and it just being like, I remember walking in. It was for the 10th anniversary this year, and I knew he was supposed to be there. And I was walking in to go to something, and I walked by and I went, Anthony, and he knew me, and I'm like, I'm nobody. But he knew who I was and who my wife was, and we like just started chatting, and we went outside and smoked a cigar like 30 minutes later and hung out, and went over to Brian's that night, and just, man, it's so cool to see the reality of who these people are, all over the country and the world, and their perspectives on life, and uh, they're all just people living a life that just have a passion and
Yep.
did something with it. Some people found success in the influencer world with doing simple reels and using audio, or people and created their own things, but everyone is very creative and very, very fun, and there's so much knowledge out there, and you learn so much from these people from a perspective you didn't have. And I think that was probably the biggest surprise for me, was just, you know, I haven't really met very, very minimal, less, less than 1% of people that are in it for the clout,
Yep.
you
Right.
know, like, and that's it. Most people are just like, no, I like this thing and I wanted to do this with it. So I posted pictures and made some stupid videos or whatever. Um, and it worked out. Got to meet some cool people.
That's cool. Very cool. All right. If you could share a drink with any historical figure or famous person, living or dead, who would it be, and what would you serve them?
Oh man, I would want to drink with. Have you ever watched Top Gear or
Oh my
um,
God. Yes. Yes.
Jeremy
Yes.
Clarkson, dude?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would. I want to share a drink with Jeremy Clarkson
That's
at
awesome.
his farm, and I want to drink his beer. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, him and
That's
Caleb, and
fantastic.
just like, I would also like to get a driving lesson from him. Like, I love to
Yep.
drive. I like driving fast cars, driven on tracks and things like that. But just like, to get to do something like that with him, and I feel like there we could bullshit back and forth, and hear some of his stories from his perspective without the limelight.
Yep.
Like, that would be so cool for me. Like, it's sure he's not like an impactful person as far as like the massiveness that is the history of this world, but like, he really just ignited passion and reality of um, automobiles and things like that for me, and I would love that, because it would just be a blast. He's just passionate about the things he does, and it's cool, and he's fucking hysterical.
He's a good guy, man. He's funny. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a fantastic one. Very cool. All right, here, last question, and then we'll wrap this up so we don't take all night. Even though I feel like I could talk to you all night long with all the stories you have and questions. If you could go back to sorry, two questions. I got two. If you go back
No,
to your
sweet.
first post or video and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
uh, don't try and imitate trends.
Good for you. It's awesome. Be yourself, right?
Yep.
It's hard to do
That's
though.
It's so hard, especially like it is within, and part of it's also a little, that's a little pride. Like, I am naturally, I don't know how much you've subscribed to the Enneagram, but my number is a 4, which is the individualist, the person who is very much like, I am my own person, very artsy, all in my feels, things like that. But I am so determined to stand out for something I did, not because of someone else doing it. Uh, I have, but in the beginning, I started doing other trends because I wanted to gain some traction. And from everything you read, that's what you're supposed to do. And does it work? Yeah, it's great. And if you can do it and still show your personality, great. I think that's super important. But for myself, it definitely would be like, just be Chris. Stop
Hmm.
trying to imitate these other things that are out there, um, and create the individual thing from the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't have got as much traction, but our first video that did well was me doing my own thing. Like our others did, they caught traction because they were a trending sound or where they were whatever, but it wasn't a lot. Uh, and then we do this one thing that is very much Jenny and I, uh, and it caught some traction. And it wasn't like crazy or anything like that, but it was very much more authentic. And it was one of our better early performing videos, and um, freed me up to be more like, oh, well, then I can do these other things and create what became our platform of, like today we're making and all that sort of stuff, uh, um, because I became more authentic.
Yep.
And, I pulled obviously from influences that I've seen, but definitely allowed it to be me. The first one of those I did, like, uh, I did something and this egg almost breaks as I do it because I was making a cocktail with an egg white. And it was it was funny because I was like, oh, that's real. And I left those kind of things in there. And that's just who I am. Like, I'm not here to not show you me fucking up,
Yep. Yep.
like,
Yep.
as there's so much of that world that is focused on perfection. I would say that long answer, I know, but I would say just be yourself in the beginning. Don't just follow
That's
the
cool.
trends.
It's easier said than done, though, right? I mean, I'll be honest. Like, even for me, I've been very hesitant to get on Instagram because my comfortability behind a camera is not that good, right? I can sit
Mm-hmm.
behind a mic all day. I've learned that through doing podcasts now. And like you
Yeah.
said, I've been honest on the podcast. I don't care if I fuck up. I don't care if you don't like it. I'm doing this for my creative outlet. If this grows into something bigger, right, then
Yep.
that's fantastic.
Yep.
But I'm going to be myself on the podcast, but I haven't got that comfortability factor yet with being in front of a camera. So it's been a unique experience for me as I kind of grow to try to see how I fit in and how I do that
Yeah.
and how to be myself, because I know I can be a big personality sometimes and
Yeah.
sometimes over the top, but it's definitely something that is easier said than done. But I agree
Yeah.
with you, right? Just be yourself. Like I think if people don't like you, they don't like you. There's 1,000
Yep.
other people that can like you, so don't tailor yourself to a trend or to something you're not. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to gain more traction from just being you and then
Yep.
connecting with people with you just being yourself, which is a fantastic. It's like I said, easier said than done,
Yeah. 100%. Oh my gosh. The moth.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
all right. Hey, give him a mic. So okay. So last question: what's the future look like for you? You got big plans, ideas? Are you do you jot everything down in a book and you reflect on it? Like, what does it look like for you? And what do you think the next couple of years look like?
Yeah, man. Some fun things. We'll reflect a little bit and we'll go forward. This year has been a wild year. Jane and I have been way less active on Instagram in the past year. My father was diagnosed with cancer over a year ago and passed this last June, and it just made a lot of like that energy kind of drain. Like I just didn't have it to pour out outside of professional world, and then stepping into 10th Mountain in the midst of that, and getting to be involved in that, and I was pouring so much out because I believe in this brand, um, but uh, Jenny and I started this this channel, this Instagram, uh, because we wanted to have a backyard bar and we wanted to, maybe one day own our own bar. Um, and we are currently, is kind of pretty close to first official announcement. We are opening a bar in Tyler, Texas,
Cool.
with an awesome partner and guy that believes in us and should be coming in 2025. So really, really excited for that. Get to have an outlet for something I wanted to do and wanted to, you know, I learned in the past few years I'm an entrepreneur. That makes sense. Being in sales, I feel like that's just kind of part of it. I think everybody is a little bit and want to do this and then watch it grow and get to have that creative outlet as well, and helping 10th Mountain grow along with that. So it's pretty cool. I'm really, really excited for what the future holds. And once there's more like concrete stuff, we'll start doing some posts and talking a little bit more about that. But Houdini's, Tyler, Texas. Come see it.
Nice. Houdini's. I like it. Man, it's like my dream job. I always tell my wife when I retire, I'm like, I want to be a bartender. I have that like personality to talk to everybody, right? And kind of introduce them to new drinks. I don't know how the hell to make any mixed drinks other than like an old fashioned or something kind of simple, but man, it'd be something that cool to kind of learn and and watch. I think, and when we go out to restaurants, we always sit at the bar to watch them make drinks, right? Because I think it's a different experience. You get to connect with somebody who's maybe passionate about what they're mixing or what's behind the bar on the shelves, and then you get a I think you get a better restaurant experience from that entire thing. And I always ask, like, what are you making, right? Like, what's in it? Like, how'd you come up with that? And it's just so cool to have those conversations and learn a little bit more about those people. So
yeah, totally agree, man. That's the thing. There's so many stories I can talk about of meeting bartenders and what they're passionate about. And I found a lot of success for 10th Mountain with that of having conversations with bartenders, and why they're making things certain ways, and you relate to them in this thing. And from a sales perspective, it opens up a door of them hearing like, oh, I want to hear more about your brand. You obviously understand what we're doing and you care about it. Like it's not just an empty, like, let me sell you this product. It is, you care about this and you got something kind of cool to offer. I think that bartenders have so many stories of things and they're creative people, man. Like so many, and there's obviously the guys that are the dive bar just wants to pour you Tito's and soda, but there's so many people out there that are passionate and want to create something good and want to continually learn and grow. I love meeting people like that. There's so many stories told behind a bar. It's pretty cool.
Another podcast idea, Behind the Bar. We need to get that one going.
Hell yeah, let's do it, man.
I like it. Well, Chris, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on and taking some time to talk with me about the podcast, or on the podcast, sorry. Great meeting you, and thanks for everything. I wish you nothing but success. You seem like one of the most genuine people I've met in a long time, right? And I appreciate that. We had a short conversation for you to come on and have a full conversation with me and be as genuine as you have been. I really, really appreciate that. So kudos to you, and I wish you all the best, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Jason. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me ramble about things I'm passionate about and get to talk about 10th. And it's cool. I love what you're doing. I love what Dream Amateur's doing. It's great, dude. Like, keep pursuing the fun stuff and having the conversations, because you're doing it with excellence, and that's really awesome to see.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Awesome. All right. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Dram Amateur Podcast. A huge thank you to all of you for tuning in, sipping along, and being part of this amazing community. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and like, share, and leave a review. It helps us grow and reach more spirit lovers like you. You can also follow me on Instagram at dram_amateur for updates, behind the scenes content, and more. Your support actually means the absolute world to me, and I can't wait to keep sharing this journey with you. So until next time, remember, life's too short for bad pours, so make every dram count. Cheers. Thank you for tuning into the Dram Amateur Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of spirits. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I certainly appreciate all the feedback and support. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes as we continue our exploration of bourbon, whiskey, rum, tequila, mezcal, and beyond. Cheers, and until next time, keep savoring every sip.